that. They essentially become class traders.
A lot of y'all are not going to like this take, but I'm going to say it anyway. Let's talk about how patriarchy hurts working class men, even though many do not acknowledge that it exists. As I've said before, patriarchy is a system, not a gender. It is a system that is built on a very small group being in power at the top over pretty much everybody else. I'll give y'all a sneak peek of this simple graphic for my September blog that's coming out on Tuesday. This reflects America's class structure, with the top 10% having more than the bottom 90% combined. Because America has a patriarchal system, the top 10% is mostly white men, and at this point may be inheritance or wives of white men. And this is due to historically, until relatively recent history, white men being the only ones who could own property, get paid for labor, have access to education, etc. The key message of patriarchal ideology is dominance. If you can dominate someone, you have the power and you get to take what they have. Patriarchy is a system that, because we have made it for men, benefits men more in society. However, it also reinforces social class divisions even among men. Who ultimately wins all of patriarchy is rich white men. So working class men do still have some disadvantages, such as expectations to be manly through risk-taking and toughness, limited emotional expression, which isn't good for anybody, economic stress as breadwinners, even as the system has evolved to not support one-income households, difficulty seeking help, both for themselves, like mentally and in general. And of course, exploitation and dangerous jobs. Notice how the top of this pyramid cannot be held up without the bottom 90%, because a lot of that wealth comes off of the labor of this bottom 90%. And for working class men, it is in more dangerous jobs usually. Now, I made a video like a month and a half ago, and I've reshared part of it throughout because it keeps coming up on why is there so much bullying in women-dominated spaces. And that a lot of it is because women-dominated fields are still usually led by men, and they're in patriarchal systems. Because remember, it's a system, not a gender. And that to get to the top of the pyramid, women fight other women and women they see as less than, usually poor and women of color, to try to get the approval of that top 10%. And the research shows that these women usually do get promoted. However, they are never fully given the keys to the kingdom. In systems like this, people don't give away that tip. They just say, I'll let you use my keys to the kingdom if you behave. But as soon as you don't, that's gone. In patriarchal systems that center white men, white women get closest to this. You can have the keys if you behave. But as soon as you don't support it, as soon as you're not a good little girl, I'm going to take them back. Notice, when do a lot of women become executives? When it's time for a glass cliff moment. That's a different video. So a lot of y'all understood this and were on board and were like, yep, that's why there's bullying in women-dominated spaces. Not all of y'all, but a lot of you. Men and women were like, yep, pushing each other, bullying each other to get to the top. Men who aren't in the top 10% do the same thing. The difference is men, especially white men, are a little higher on this pyramid than women are. So there's more room to punch down across more arenas. Patriarchy hurts men, but it severely hurts women more. And here's why. One, to assert their dominance, because again, patriarchy is all about dominance. Men, especially men who feel powerless, often reinforce patriarchal norms by exercising control and dominance over the women in their lives. And this can look like physical and emotional abuse, financial control, sexual harassment or assault, limiting women's opportunities in education or careers, and enforcing strict gender roles at home, which perpetuates the cycle because that's again raising the little girls who don't know they can do math and who never learn how to change their own tires, which end up being opportunities for better paid labor later on. And even for individuals who don't oppress women interpersonally, they can still benefit from this system. And that's not inherently their fault. But it's things like this system has perpetuated biases and supported gender roles that say that men are allowed to be more assertive and they're perceived as better leaders and they're perceived as more likable even when they're direct and dominant. And so they're more likely to get higher paid, better jobs. But of course, there's still a class difference there, right? Of if you've had access to different opportunities and you're groomed culturally to be in more white-collar, high-paid environments, then you're going to have an advantage over men who do not. Now, granted, some blue-collar jobs can be well paid. However, they are usually also more dangerous and require more travel time. So patriarchy is a system that is very complex and hurts everybody, including men, but it does hurt women more. Its fundamental purpose is to maintain dominance of a small group. And that maintaining dominance is what links patriarchy to another system called white supremacy. Because again, going back in history, when we were making these systems, who had access to all of these things? Wealthy white men. The link between the two systems is dominance. So even though it benefits men, it's still on that pyramid. White men are a little bit higher on the pyramid than black men. And there may be some abuse between them as well. As in, like I said, men who might feel powerless, white men who might feel powerless, punching downwards at Black men and Hispanic men and Asian men, etc. And ultimately, who wins in this system is very small. You might get promoted more as a man, you might make it farther up that pyramid, but Elon Musk and the like are sitting at the top, and they don't really care if you have access to the top of the pyramid. They just want you to buy their stuff and keep working so you keep making them more money.